Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hello and welcome to the ISO Show. Thanks very much for joining us today. And I'm delighted to be joined by Caroline Banks, who's the office manager for Todd Research. And she looks after all things related to facilities, quality environment, information security and health and safety. So we're in for an interesting conversation here when we're talking about ISO standards and her experience and journey. And also, interestingly, Caroline has recently been on our coaching program within the isologyhub as well. So it'll be good to get some insights into that. So welcome, Caroline.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks very much for joining us. So before we dive into questions about your experience and journey, it'd be great to find out a little bit more about you. And could you tell us something that not many people know about you?
It's a little bit boring, but I started running in March 2015. I hadn't run since I was at school. I started on the couch to 5K, and I aimed to run my first half marathon in October of the same year, which I did and I completed. And since then I've done 21 half marathons and 2 full marathons. So it was been a bit of a journey, but I do enjoy running, although the past year has not been so great, but I still in the background do the odd 5Ks here and there, but not half marathons at the moment. So, but yeah, I'm proud of my achievement. And you say not many people know that I do that.
No, that's amazing. I think, for those that, haven't done any exercise, and it seems quite daunting, doesn't it? But I think the couch to 5K, I've heard that can really kind of kickstart and be the catalyst to
definitely
kind of regular exercise. But yeah, that's something else, doing 21 half marathons and a couple of marathons as well. That's no mean feat. So well done for that.
Thank you.
Right, so Caroline, I mentioned a little bit, well, very briefly, I only mentioned the name Todd Research, the company that you work for. Could you enlighten us and just share a bit more information about what Todd Research actually does?
So Todd Research, we've been about since 1950. We design, manufacture and supply X-ray scanning equipment. We've got customers all over the world. And following on from the supply of that equipment, we actually then carry out service and maintenance. It's one of our biggest areas of business, to continue with that service that we provide to our customers.
Okay, great. And I know Todd Research have been busy raising standards for many years, and you're now certified to a couple of ISO standards. Could you just tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we're certified to ISO 9001 and 27001. 9001, we basically inherited the system from our previous company that we were part of. Todd Research, there was a management buyout back in 2016, and we segregated from another company. So we've inherited the quality management system, which I've kind of streamlined to make it my own. And also in 2021, we embarked on ISO 27001 with the help of Blackmores.
So what was the main driver behind achieving the ISO standards?
So 9001, because we're a manufacturing company, I think it's imperative that we maintain this standard and that we've all strive to give our customers the best quality possible of product and service. So that's always something, it's a given that our customers ask for that. And with 27001, that was more sales driven. We were finding that we were being asked a lot for ISO 27001 accreditation from tenders. So we deal with a lot of government tenders. So yeah, a lot of those customers are requesting the 27001 standard.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that you'd inherited the QMS and you've streamlined and revamped it. I mean, how did you find that experience and what were the end results?
I think it was a good experience. It needed to be done. We were finding that there was a lot of documentation, a lot of procedures that really weren't relevant to what we did as a company. And with the help of Sarah at Blackmores, she helped me streamline the system. So with her internal auditing, we kind of then revamped our procedures and the way we worked. There was a lot of documentation was cut out of our quality management system because it wasn't relevant. So it was definitely a benefit to actually sort of look at it and have an impartial company look at it as well and say, do you actually do that? So yeah, it was invaluable.
You could kind of liken it to, well, not directly, but the couch to 5K. It's almost like, right, okay, we need to get started on this somewhere. It's going to be difficult, and we've got a wealth of documentation and procedures, but do we really need it? And it's a case of getting leaner and leaner, isn't it? So you're kind of fighting fit, really, as a business.
Definitely. I mean, I'm still finding documentation that really isn't relevant. Since we moved into these new premises last year, so obviously we've had to again revamp our system because obviously we're now in our own premises. So I'm still finding things that were relating back to the old company. So it's an ongoing sort of minefield, so to speak. If I'm finding things sort of on a daily basis that need to be looked at and rejigged, but at the end of the day, a quality system is not going to stay the same forever. It's always going to be evolving. The same with information security; it's always evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about information security, so this is a standard that you're involved with implementing. So how long did it take you from beginning through to the end to achieve certification?
So we started our 27001 journey in April 2021. So we started off with carrying out a gap analysis and looking at our current SWOT and PESTLE analysis and sort of the market risk assessments. And we certified in December 2021, so 6 months.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. And did it help that you already had ISO 9001 in place?
I think so, yeah. I mean, we sort of had that base there, albeit obviously in the inherited base, but it definitely helped, and we just added to it. And I would say with the help of Blackmores, we improved what we already had and then implemented the 27 into the system that we already had. So we just made the decision sort of at the outset that we were going to, instead of having two separate systems, integrate the two together. So instead of having a quality management system and an information security management system, we opted to call it our business management system. So it brings it all together.
Yeah, great. So when you started on that journey to implement 27001, you would have undertaken a gap analysis because that's generally the starting point when you're implementing a new ISO standard. And obviously, the whole point of that is to identify the gaps. And in all businesses, there will always be gaps when you haven't implemented that particular ISO standard. I mean, what would you say was the biggest gap, Caroline, when you did the gap analysis?
I think the biggest challenge that we had was actually carrying out the risk assessment, so getting the directors involved and actually going through the standard and picking out what risks were actually relevant to our company. I think that was the biggest challenge that we faced.
Because there's a lot of them, isn't there? There's in terms
Yes.
of risks, you've got everything from intentional risks, which could be hacking or, some type of malicious intent, right through to the unintentional, which are accidental. And there is a lot of those as well, isn't there? From not just like, say, for example, a loss of a laptop, but it could be, we've had some clients where there's been flooding in the basement and it's cost them thousands of pounds because that's where their servers were kept. So there's a lot of things that you probably need to, I guess, take a step back and have a think about that you wouldn't consider on a normal day-to-day in business.
Yeah, absolutely. I say information security was a whole new ball game for me. I'd never even thought about it before. And yeah, it opened my eyes to what the risks were. And obviously you hear about phishing and malware and all that, but I didn't have a clue at the beginning. But now...
Yeah, it is an education, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't say I'm an expert now, but I understand it a bit more.
Yeah, I was going to say it's more about having that general awareness on all the different types of risks, and I think a lot of that can actually be taken away into your kind of personal and home life, because we have passwords for everything, don't we? And getting access and lots of different, organisations that we give our data to. It just makes you a little bit more mindful of what the risks are, in your home life as well. So, I mean, what difference would you say that it's made then to the business now, looking back, now that you've bridged those gaps?
I think making the system our own, so sort of integrating the two systems and making it all about Todd Research, it meant there was a lot of paperwork and a lot of documentation needed reviewing, but it actually made me think about what we do as a business and made our directors think what we do as a business, and definitely helped with the streamlining.
Good, good. And what would you say is the main thing that you've learned from the experience of implementing both standards, actually, from quality and information security?
I have a better understanding of how the company works. So from the manufacturing side to the processing side to the finance side, I get an insight now into what everybody does. I already had an inkling of, we're a small company, so I understood, the way things work, but sort of getting down to the nitty gritty with our technical manager and our operations manager, you sort of get to grips with what everybody does within the company. And also I found, because I'm now carrying out some of the internal audits, I've learnt from obviously the expert that is Sarah, that impartiality is what is needed. I started doing my first audits this year, and I think as I've gone along, I am getting better at them. So, I think the impartiality is definitely something that I've learnt during the whole process.
Yeah, I think there are a number of benefits, aren't there, I think, along the way. But I mean, what would you say are the main benefits then?
I think having the integrated system across the two standards, that's definitely a benefit, because there's a lot of core elements that covers both standards. So leadership, the documentation requirements, internal auditing, management review. Also, I find the corrective action log that we've got in place, I think that's, for me, that is my tool. My key tool is whenever I carry out an audit or whenever we are audited, all of the actions go into the log, and I check that on a weekly basis and sort of have a delve into the quality system and the information security system, and just obviously work and get them resolved.
Well, then you're taking a proactive approach, aren't you, to business improvement, which, the company's only going to, derive the benefits of that. And obviously clients are as well, because you're identifying any potential issues or concerns and learning from that, and then, obviously correcting it, which I think a lot of businesses that don't have ISO standards, they tend to miss that non-conformance log. I know it's not a very attractive word for it, but
No.
ultimately it helps to stop you from firefighting and helps to prevent the small issues become major issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mentioned at the very beginning that you're on our coaching program for the isologyhub. So for the benefit of members that are listening, we had some European funding to support, I think it was 7 businesses in total in the east of England, to basically raise awareness on environmental issues and to implement some practical tools and controls to help them to improve their environmental footprint. Some decided to go for certification, and some were happy just having that environmental management system in place within the business. I just wondered if you could possibly provide some insight into what your experience of what the isology hub was like, and the coaching that you had, Caroline, if that's okay.
So I took part in the coaching sessions that were held end of last year, beginning of this year, with regard to the environmental standard. We made the decision quite early on that the company wasn't going to go for the standard at the end of the coaching sessions, but having that background coaching with Blackmores gave me the insight as to what requirements would be needed if we, in the distant future, decided to go for the ISO 14001. The whole experience of the Isology Hub, I mean, it was great. There was so much information within there, the training sessions, the coaching sessions, all the documentation that was made available to us was immense. I didn't use it to its full capability because the time for me, it just didn't work. But I did learn an awful lot. We've recently moved into these premises, and so obviously it's a whole new ball game with regard to the environment, because we have to think of the environment. With the coaching sessions that I had on, the one-to-one coaching sessions, it made me more aware of what things we need to put in place as a company. For instance, when we sell X-ray scanners, we actually sometimes bring old ones back. Before, the company that we worked with, they disposed of the units for us, so they would get rid of all the metalwork, they had all that in place. So obviously moving into our own premises, it's something that we had to think about. So we've put into place a scrap metal policy. This is something that I wouldn't have thought about until I had the one-to-ones with Blackmores, with Rachel. And also I've looked at streamlining our engineer service visits, so making the most of our engineers when they're in a particular region within the country. That's actually rolling out as we speak. We have engineers travelling all across the country. We've got multiple customers across the country, so we were trying to obviously reduce our carbon footprint, be more environmentally friendly, and set out an initiative where we would bring as many services together within one area. It's going to show sort of in the next sort of 4 to 6 months, but hopefully it will make a definite positive effect on the way we work.
That sounds great. So, yeah, I think that's a good point that, you can't necessarily see the return on your investment immediately, or the results of your actions immediately. It does take time, but I think the important thing is to monitor and measure that, to look at how successful that initiative was or wasn't. And when you mentioned like 4 to 6 months, I think it'd be really interesting to see what the results were. And because I think from what you've mentioned, it sounds as though there are some resource efficiencies there. Obviously, there's the impact on the environment that will be reduced by clustering activities in a geographical area. And that's what clients are looking for as well, aren't they? They're looking for you to be a little bit more innovative with, thinking about their environmental footprint as well as your own. And yeah, it'd be good to see what the results are.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it as well.
So in terms of the isologyhub then, obviously you used some of the templates and the training. I mean, what would you say was probably the most useful for you in terms of the resources in the isologyhub?
I think going through doing the risk assessment with Rachel was definitely for me the eye-opener. That's where I come up with the ideas of where I wanted to look into the environment and where we had the biggest effect on the environment. So definitely looking at what we did already. And it was quite eye-opening in the fact that we actually already did things. So, it did.
That's always a positive, isn't it?
Yeah. Running through that with Rachel definitely helped. So,
yeah. And then, you can discuss that with the leadership team in terms of what you're doing really well already, which is great. And you can communicate that with your clients and prospective clients. They're all the positives, aren't they, from an environmental perspective? But then also to communicate what your plans are moving forward into the future to improve on that even further.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to certification then. So you mentioned earlier on about the reason for going for 27001 was that it was driven by clients and prospective clients, and it was coming up in tenders. I mean, what would you say, looking back now, was the main benefit from achieving certification?
I think having the both standards sets us aside from our competitors. While most competitors have got 9001, not many have 27. I also think it brings continuity for the business, so it will eventually sort of help us improve the quality and the way we work.
Great. And I think over the last couple of years, because you mentioned from 2020 when you kind of started this journey in terms of looking at the quality management system and streamlining it. So you've had experience of the 9001 streamlining, the 27001 implementation and achieving certification. And now you've also implemented aspects of the environmental standard, ISO 14001. What top tips would you give to somebody who's looking to implement an ISO standard, Caroline?
Well, I actually would say to use an independent company like yourselves, just because you're the experts, and also I get distracted. I've got a diverse role, so I can't concentrate solely on quality, information security. I find that having sort of my mentor, Sarah, in the background, helping me with internal audits and helping me getting documentation in place, I found that invaluable. So that for me would be my top tip to people looking to implement any ISO standards, would be to utilise an external company, even if it's just for the initial rollout or just going forward for external or internal audits and external audits.
Oh, I'm not going to disagree with that. And I didn't prompt you to
No.
ask you to say that. So thank you very much. But no, I think obviously working with a consultant like Blackmores or resources like the isologyhub, there's a wealth of years of experience of learning from mistakes and also having a lot of success along the way. And I guess, yeah, it's our duty to share that with, people like yourself, Caroline, who are looking to implement and raise standards as well. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to help businesses on their journey, really. And
I would love to be that knowledgeable and know the standard inside out. It's just time, I don't have the time to do that all the time. I've got so much else on my plate that it does help to have a fresh set of eyes to look at our business and help us on our way, basically.
yeah, and I don't think you can expect to be an expert in everything either, because, with the changes in legislation and regulations and that sort of thing, and obviously the standards are changing as well. So we've got the new 27001 that came out. And oh, by the way, just a quick plug for the ISO 27001 transition game plan that Sarah and Steve actually created. That's available now in the isologyhub if you're looking at transitioning to 27001. So I just thought I'd get that in there, Caroline, if you don't mind, for our ISO show listeners.
Not a problem.
Great. Well, it's been lovely to chat with you today. But before we go, if you could gift a book to somebody, what would it be and why?
Right, this is a female option here. So I would gift the book Menopausing, or I would recommend the book Menopausing by Davina McCall.
Oh, I've heard about that one. Yes. Yeah, I think I need to get that one.
Yeah. Being a female of a certain age, I'm experiencing changes that I couldn't put my finger on what was wrong. So my eyes were definitely opened, and I think it would be great to pass on to colleagues, partners, just to give them an insight to sort of let people know what perimenopause is, the menopause is, because things are changing, and it's not pleasant.
Yeah. And I think this is only kind of a recent thing that there's been, research done on it, and it's actually been communicated. And because 10, 20 years ago, a lot of women would have thought they were just going round the bend,
Yeah. Well, I do think that as well, but
yeah. But it is actually a real thing, isn't it? The perimenopause and menopause. And yeah, I'm going to be getting that. A few friends have told me about that, actually.
It's definitely one to read.
Yeah, that's reminded me. I do need to get that book. I've heard it's really good. So thank you for that.
No problem.
If you were to leave our listeners with a favourite quote, what would it be?
Okay, we go back to running again. So I have a medal hanger at home with all my medals on. And across the top of the medal hanger, it states, "It's not so much that I began to run, it's that I continued." That's me. That's what I'm all about.
Oh, I love it. Yes, I haven't heard that one, Caroline. I really like that. That's great. Yeah, nice way to end on an inspirational quote like that. And obviously, you're proof that, you put that into practice, haven't you, over the
Yeah,
years,
definitely.
which is fabulous. Great. Well, I've really enjoyed chatting with you today, Caroline. In fact, I'm kind of tempted to get you back on in about 8 months' time to see what those initiatives have resulted in on the environmental management side.
Well, I'll still be about, I'm sure.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Caroline.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for listening to the ISO show today. And just a quick reminder that if you like listening to this podcast, please do subscribe, and if possible, leave us with a lovely review, because the reviews do actually make a difference in getting our podcasts out to a wider audience for them to learn and be educated on all things ISO, whether it's learning about new ISO standards or, hearing about inspirational people like Caroline, who's just shared their experience and their journey with multiple ISOs. So yeah, leaving a review really does help. So if you could do that on whichever media player you're listening to, it would be most appreciated. And you can also suggest a future topic as well for us. So we have covered many different ISO standards, from, the mainstream standards, right through to niche standards, and also specific topics and business critical areas in the past. But we're open to suggestions, and this is your podcast for you to listen to whether you're out, walking the dog, doing the ironing, or just having a coffee at work. And we'd love to be able to share expertise with industry experts on subjects that you're interested in. or indeed if you'd like to come on as a guest, if you think you've got an interesting story or, some news and information in relation to raising standards that you think is going to help to spread the word. Okay, thanks once again for listening, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next episode of the ISO show.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.